I invite the person to read the message of support to the family. If you please could come forward. You can take that seat there, sir. Oh, that's fine. You're close enough. You're close enough. We have a very enthusiastic assistant program director. If somebody should see during the singing of the anthem maybe, Imam Talib, please just direct him. He might be a very humble religious person. I think we should start now. Good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to our cathedral this evening, and I extend warm greetings from Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, who is at present in London, and also our cathedral congregation, our church wardens, and the hastily assembled committee that helped draw this program together, and the service of memory and of celebration that we gather in the very proud name of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela in terms of bonds of affection and in terms of all that she has been and will continue to be, both in our history, in the present, and the road that lies ahead, uncharted as it is. But if it has any inkling of the way she led the way and kept the flame of freedom aloft, then we are on good ground. Also acknowledge Madam Mayor, it's good to have you with us, and all other visitors to our cathedrals. If there are any Australians here, we love you. And then a special word of welcome also to our religious leaders who have, again at very short notice, come forward. And I need to especially mention Chief of the Khoi, Chief Levisu. When I called him last night, he had just arrived from Cape Town, in Zowar, and he unfortunately expressed his regrets. And then 5 minutes later, I think he had consulted with the local government. His wife said, "Ons moet terug gaan, Levis." And their chief is with us. En sê dankbaar, met deernis en respect. Dis 'n riem onder die hart. Dankie. And then I need to read a message from Archbishop Thabo and the other person from the social workers, if you could come forward at this time also. A message from Archbishop Thabo Makgoba. Condolences to the family of Winnie Mandela, Mama Winnie, the political family, and the South African family, and all who supported her in the struggle against apartheid. Her courage, defiance, as well as her beauty and warm smile, says the Archbishop, attracted me. She was a sister, mother, and a grandmother to many, a devout Methodist Christian. A forgiven sinner like me has gone. We must mourn her even as we rejoice for her as a life lived to God's glory. The Archbishop continues and he says, life threw her a lot to her in difficult days. And so let us acknowledge that. But most importantly, the good that she did for women, the good that she did for children and all South Africans. And the Archbishop concludes, I am in England where tributes continue to pour in. I send my love and prayers to you at this Eastertide as we gather in memory of Mama Winnie. May the risen Lord fill you with hope, faith, and courage to stand up and be counted in your vision for a just and equal society, free of racism, patriarchy, and poverty. God bless Thabo of Cape Town. The other message.
A message of support to the Mandela family from the National Association Social Work, Western Cape Chapter, and the Western Cape Social Work Veterans. The passing of Mama Winnie Mandela has come as a great shock to the social work profession, and we would like to express our sincere condolences to the Mandela family. In Comrade Winnie, we have lost a giant. As a profession, we would like to express our deepest admiration for the work Ma Winnie has done as a social worker and as an activist during the most difficult time in our country to be a social worker. We want to share our deepest admiration for her dedication to challenge the apartheid government, as well as the inequalities that were created by the then government. Comrade Winnie embodies the type of social work activists that we need in a country that are seen as the most unequal country in the world from a socio-economic perspective. She definitely has set very high benchmarks for our profession, and it is this very sad period that the passing makes us reflect about the type of social worker that we need in South Africa today. In her passing, we also find renewed energy to recommit, to strengthen our approach to confront all human rights violations, and dedication to keep government accountable, to make sure that there is a strong safety net to care for the poor and the vulnerable. Thank you for sharing Mama Winnie with our profession. She has done a great deal to shape our profession. Hambakale Mama Winnie, Comrade Winnie, we will keep the flame going high and strong.
Thank you very much. I asked that the choir, I've asked for the choir a few times. Is the choir here? Please come forward. We thank the Rainbow Academy for being with us tonight, and we can give them a warm welcome. Congregation, would you please stand? I refer you to the liturgy in your hand, the salutation, and after the salutation, we will then be led in the singing of the national anthem. And so I say to you, my sisters and brothers, the Lord be with you. Mag die Here met u wees. Assalamu alaikum. Nkosi maibe nani. remaining standing, we invite no, you may, quiet, not you. We ask the Bafundisi to come forward, the religious leaders.
Let us pray. On this day, Lord, as we remember your beloved daughter, Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, we gather to stand before you in thanksgiving for her life and her witness for justice and truth, for her commitment to liberation and freedom of your people in this country, for her faithfulness to the struggle of the people, and her courage. We thank you for her servant spirit. We thank you for her love. We thank you for her motherly nature. We pray and grieve with her family, especially her children and grandchildren, the extended members of the Madikizela and Mandela families, together with their friends and the entire nation at this time. That as we are downcast as people in mourning for our loss, we turn to you for your unfailing love and the joy which you promise us for healing our broken hearts, as you have and continue to heal the wounds of this land. And we give thanks that together with those faithful departed in the same struggle for your people, that Mama Winnie has had a share in bringing about your kingdom in this country, and that she now shares with you new life in the eternal kingdom. And so, Lord, we pray and ask that you receive this, your beloved servant, who goes before us with signs of faith, who now rests in your peace. According to all your promises, grant Mama Winnie, with all who rest in you, a new life of refreshment in light and peace through our risen Lord, Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
As we contemplate the journey of the soul of Mama Winnie, I'd like to read an extract from the Bhagavad Gita. These bodies of the embodied one, who is eternal, indestructible, and boundless, are known as finite. The embodied one is not born, nor doth he or she die, nor having been ceaseth he, she, any more to be. As a man or woman casting worn-out garments taketh new ones, so the dweller in the body, casting off worn-out bodies, enter into others that are new. For certain is death for the born, and certain is birth for the dead. Therefore, over the inevitable, thou shouldst not grieve. I would like to read from our universal prayer. Om Asatoma Satkamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Badrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkhamapmaya. O Supreme Spirit, lead us from untruth to truth. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. O Lord, in thee may all be happy. May all be free from misery. May all realize goodness, and may no one suffer pain. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Masithandazeni kunye. Egameni loyise elonyana nelomoya ingcwele siza kuwe ke Thixo ngenxa yeliqhawekazi ngenxa yalomama ngenxa yomama wesizwe sinikela umoya wakhe kuwe Thixo sithi somandla omhle ugqatso lwakhe ulufezile ukwenzile konke bekufanele ba kwenziwe nguye emhlabeni siyavuma ke baba makaphumle umakhulu Winnie nomzamo Madikizela-Mandela ngoxolo siyamkhulula babo siphakamisa ichefe ezimhlophe sithi hamba kahle eqabane ngegama lika Yesu Kristu Nkosi yethu amen.
Tida naku, tida ke, uni karu. Ada kure re, ti abutse, abutau, iluptau, so dare. Huri kahu. Kuikai nami sida Eloi ba'a kai basa rama ti ip seranamu sabata korib batri Ayo tahu, ayo bare, Jesus ba. Kaise tata met Winnie Mandela. Kaise kure. Kaise hare. Kaise kumre. Guhana. Kai tere abate kwikau in the powerful name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
As we remain in silence, our heads bowed, we are mindful of the place of Mama Winnie in our lives. And we bring before the eternal throne of bliss and of love her family, and we pray that the ache and the emptiness and the longing they experience will be filled with the memory of her laughter and the way she was present in their lives. We also pray for the repose of the souls of others in our city who have passed on recently. We bring before you a loving God, Pam Golding and her family. And as we also remember another child of the city, a woman of our love and life, Faiza Desai, we thank you for her warm and beautiful spirit and a struggling heart and example. And we pray for comfort for Saraj and the family. And so may they rest in peace and rise in glory. Please be seated. I now call upon Lusapo Slachaneni, a member of our congregation, but more especially the voice of our student community.
Good evening, everyone. And as Mama Winnie would say, she would say, Father Michael, allow me to say all protocol observed. Lusapo Tlachaneni, here on behalf of young people, not only in Cape Town, but the whole of South Africa. And the way that I'm going to be speaking tonight is I'm going to share with you how Mama Winnie was introduced to me and what she meant to me. This that I have on here on me is a card. This is a prison card that documents you once you get arrested. This card belongs to me. I received this card on the 12th of October, 2016. Prisoner number 216564557, awaiting trial. Next week, in the next 2 weeks, on the 20th of April, I go sit down for trial. I was arrested as one of many young people across the country, starting from 2015 up until earlier this year. Countless students have been arrested, activists for the Fees Must Fall movement. When I was younger, both my parents were activists in their own rights. And my understanding of an activist is someone who goes and gets things done. Both my parents got things done and they died young, but they touched people's lives. And I'd like to think that Mama Winnie has touched each and every life in here, outside of here, and in the world at large. When I was asked to speak and reflect of the life of this beautiful woman, I was like, what am I gonna say? I grew up listening and hearing stories of Mama Winnie, that she had been married to Utatu Nelson Mandela. But she was never really close to home, and she was more of a fascination and a comrade amongst my parents. And as I grew older and I was a teenager and I moved to Cape Town, I always shied away from politics. I wasn't interested in politics because that's where people get killed and people die and you never solve world problems. But Mama Winnie was a rural girl from the Eastern Cape, which also happens to be where I'm from. And she made her way and her journey found her in Johannesburg, where her journey would begin. And I won't bore you with the stories because you know. But Mama Winnie for me today stands out because she was, as the young people would say, lit. She was so lit. Like, I love her because she had a fire in her spirit, in her belly. She didn't care who she was talking to. She would just state her case. And I watched a couple of interviews of Mama Winnie, and whenever people asked her, who do you say Mama Winnie is? She would say, I'm not gonna say who I am, but I would like to let the people decide who I am. She is a woman of many faces, and each and every face is different from the next one. But she somehow penetrates you, and you find a way to relate to her. So my relationship with Mama Winnie starts in 2015, and I just returned back home from a 2-year stay in America. My cousin plonks down a book at me and says, "You're bored, you have nothing to do, read this book." It was 491 days. A story that would record her stay and her incarceration. Little did I know that a year later, after reading this book, I would actually be arrested as well. And when I got arrested and I was terrified, I didn't know what to do. But in my head, I kept remembering, wait a minute, there's a woman that you know. And she's not only one woman, but hundreds of women in South Africa fought for your freedom, fought for your right to speak and for your right to want transformation. So why will you be scared? But prison is a scary thing. And Mama Winnie strengthened me, and I'm sure she strengthened each and everyone who's had to go through that ordeal. She said in her life that the prison system and the harassment from the police made her hard. It made her fearless, and she was angry as well. And as hard of a thing that she had to go through, I am grateful, because I do not think, had she not been inside prison, she would have been strong as she was. She would have carried the country on her back. And yes, people say she's a controversial woman, but she did what she had to do. And all I want to say in her memory today, Mama Winnie, you shined a light on this country, on this continent, for what you believed was right, for what you believed that the people of this country deserved. Even when your own citizenship was in question, even when you were taken away from your family, from your kids, you still fought for what you believed in and you knew who you were. But most importantly, God was at your side, and you always put faith as the one thing that made you stronger, even though the system tried to break you down. And as we lay you to rest, we will continue fighting the fight that you started, because it hasn't ended. You were a child for many years, and you endured a trial for 27 years, bringing out Utata Nelson Mandela, of which I do not believe he would have been as great as he was and as celebrated as he was if it wasn't for you. And to all the unsung women, the unsung heroes out there, we all have a Winnie in us, and let us not be shunned and quieted down and silenced, because Mama Winnie was never silenced. We do what's right, we don't forget the women and children. We take care of everyone, and we still strive forward. Amandla!
We now call upon Thokozile-Madonko to come forward. She's going to recite a poem.
Good evening. Winnie. There are scars on her hands and her feet. She, Mrs. Guerrilla, communist, adulterer. She was angry and she was black. Her weapon was always her mind. Locked away, written out, asked to quieten down. After all, the letters were to your lover. No tears were shed, despite reconciliation and truth demanding them. His history would write her out. The blood on her hands was of a greater rage than that of her comrades. No complicated questions asked of their survival of the crime against humanity, of childbearing with security eyes watching. Every bitter move, every angle, every loving laugh and bitter scream made government property, being dragged away from family and friends while the world watches, loves, hates, judges, and defends. What was expected of this woman in a revolutionary brother's world? May you rest well as one of the mothers of the nation now free, and may your story be told in the fullness of truth, revolution. Amandla!
Thank you, Thokozile. Our next person who will come forward is Professor Reverend Dr. Mary Ann Plaatje van Huffel. She is the president of the World Council of Churches in Geneva. En sy kom van ver, is van Prieska. Prieska via Wellington.
Thanks a lot for inviting me to this space. It is a great honor for me to be with you, Dean Michael Weber, in the Anglican Church. May the good Lord bless you for the initiative. I'm going to read the tribute on behalf of the World Council of Churches, and you remember right clearly that already in 1998, the late Mandela expressed his gratitude in Harare to the World Council of Churches for their relentless support during the struggle of apartheid. The reading is as follows. The World Council of Churches express their heartfelt condolences to the family of the late Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, and hope that it would serve as comfort in a time of great sadness. Madikizela-Mandela became the public face of the struggle during the heydays of apartheid. She was indeed the voice of the voiceless. She was the embodiment of the struggle against racism, patriarchy, gender-based violence, socio-eco injustice. She stood courageously on the side of the oppressed, the exploited, and the disadvantaged. With resilience, she fought racist discrimination, resisted the violation of her human dignity, especially during the 491 days in solitary confinement, and opposed the embeddedness of patriarchy in the society. Madikizela-Mandela's unbending spirit through the years of imprisonment, banishment, harassment, is challenging us as well as the ecumenical world in a profound way. Mama Winnie will be remembered in our circles daily for her rare ability to reconcile opposing parties, as well as her uncompromising advocacy for the creation of a more egalitarian society. Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's life epitomized in more than one way those who hunger and thirst for justice, liberation in all spheres of society. Her courageous defiance was and is in more than one way an inspiration for all freedom-loving people across the globe. She ran her race. The thoughts and the prayers of the ecumenical community are with Madikizela-Mandela's family. May she rest in peace and rise in glory. The scripture readings as follow. Isaiah 57 verse 1 up till verse 2. The righteousness perish, and no one takes it to heart. The devout are taken away, and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. May she rest in peace. May she rest in peace and rise in glory. Amen.
Our next reflection is from the Vicar General of the Arch-Catholic Diocese, Father Peter John, and Pearson. I had asked if it's necessary to introduce him, and he very humbly reminded me that it might appear discourteous if I didn't. So, Father, as a brief.
We are in every way in an evening hour. The sun in the solar system is sunk behind the mountains, and the sun of our struggle has finally reached her resting place. This is an evening hour, and the people mourn. The people mourn, and when they mourn, as we know so well, the only thing we can hang on to are not the fine words, but the deep and abiding and resilient memories of those who have been markers on our own path. And we are in such an hour now. We are in an hour when we all are comforted by our memories. My first memory of meeting Mrs. Mandela was also in an hour of death. It was in the horrors that filled those days after the Alexandra massacre, after those people had been mowed down so mercilessly by the forces of apartheid, and we gathered to bury them. We gathered even though we were told our numbers were too big, even though we were told we couldn't sing, even though we were told we couldn't pray. People resist that kind of injustice. And as we gathered to lower those people into their graves, those now unremembered people into their graves, suddenly the crowd parted like the great Red Sea. And Winnie Mandela and Priscilla Jana walked through that crowd. Winnie, who'd been banned from attending any gathering. Winnie, who was out of the area to which she was prescribed. Winnie came and she walked, and I remember being mesmerized by every step she took, as she took one defiant step after another, and with every step she said, in that silence that filled, and the energy that filled that space, her silence and her defiant step said, this land does not belong to those who colonized it. Every place that I put my foot shall be the land that belongs to the people. And she never ever turned back on assuring that the land belonged to the people and that the people shall govern. Winnie walked. She walked that day as a Ulysses through our land, through our time, and through our history. And I might add, as a footnote, in all humility, I held the umbrella for her as she walked. My only claim to fame, I held the umbrella for Winnie Mandela. As Winnie walked that day, as she defied every unjust restriction, as she filled the space she wasn't meant to be in, Winnie reminded us that no law and no bigoted, small-minded man and woman who sat in power could ever determine the way we're going to live. We were going to live as free women and men in a free country, and every grave that opened in this country to be filled with those who died was a pledge that that tomorrow would come. I remember watching as I held that umbrella with one hand and tried to make the sign of the cross with the other hand. I can't multitask. I remembered that as we stood in front of that grave, she literally stared the grave down. There's no other way I can put it. She looked at it with a defiance and with an attitude that said, grave, you are not going to win. Death, you have no victory over this place. Our country is not a place of death. Our country is destined for those who live, and those who live with a moral authority and a power. They will rule one day, not you, spirit of death. And to a dying day, Winnie held on to that. Even when her flame waned, and even when the nights were dark and hard for her, even when her voice was no longer heard in the public domain, Winnie was a woman of ideas. And those ideas haven't died. And there's perhaps never been a moment such as this, where we need ideas, where the spaces that are being opened need to be filled with good things. And Winnie is the guarantor that that shall happen. She is the inspiration that says, we will not rest. We will not rest until no child goes to bed hungry, until no child falls down a pit latrine, until every child and every woman and man is free to live the fullness of who they meant to be. That day we will salute and say, the struggle is over, our job has been done. Rest well, Winnie.
And I'll invite you to just a small prayer. Let us live as Mama Winnie lived, with the spirit of faith, of prayer, of forgiveness, of repentance, of communal joy, of concern for the needy, and for the needs of so many brothers and sisters, in the certainty that the Lord will fulfill what He has promised us, eternal life. Amen, and so be it.
Thank you. We do not have Janine van Roy Black Pearl with us tonight. She called earlier to apologize. Likewise, Primrose and Khwebe, they're not able to make the commitment. So I asked Dene, Willie, could you come forward? Are you around? The piano is here. And while I see a movement, thank you. And while Dene is coming forward, just to say thank you very much, Father Peter John. Your Methodist root suffers very strongly. And I asked him, I looked at his notes and I said, how long will you be speaking? He said, only 3 minutes. And then he said, but when the Spirit gets hold of me.
Time is a colonial concept.
He says, time is a colonial concept. But I think I'm going to keep him away from the mic next time. We invite Willie, Dene Willie, to come forward. And she is going to sing a song for us.
Good evening, everybody. It is an honor to be here this evening. And I would like to dedicate this to Mama Winnie. Dear Mama Winnie, I never got to meet you, but the history books do tell of a phenomenal woman, though not perfect, but with Tata Madiba, you lived imprisoned as well. You sacrificed our entire life. You sacrificed your entire life to liberate our country and see justice unfold. Why don't we ever stop to wonder, my dear, how you survived this unbearable injustice and fear? A lonely mother, a heartbroken wife, how did you withstand the walls of strife? We see your struggle, we see your heart. May the love and grace of God generously and majestically with you depart. I welcome you to sing with me. Come with me down Paradise Road. This way, please. I'll carry your load. 'Cause this you won't believe. Come with me to paradise skies. Look outside and open your eyes. 'Cause this you must believe. There are better days before us and a winding bridge behind us, fire smoking. The fire is blazing. There's a woman waiting, weeping, and a young man nearly beaten, all for love. Paradise was almost closing down. Ooh. Do, 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 do. Come with me to paradise days. It will change your life. It will change your ways. Oh, but this you won't believe. Come with me to Paradise Lane, away from the heartache, away from the pain. I know, 'cause I have been. There are better days before us, come on, and a burning bridge behind us, fire smoking. The sky is blazing. There's a woman waiting, weeping, and a young man almost beaten, all forlorn. Paradise was almost closing down. Ooh. the sky is blazing, there's a woman waiting, weeping, and a young man almost beaten or forlorn. His paradise was almost closing down. Ooh. You must believe, you must believe, you must believe. You must believe, you must believe, you must believe. Sing it with me one more time. You must believe, you must believe, you must believe. Paradise Road.
Thank you very much, Janae. What is the name of the pianist? Mr. Ricky Klainsmith on piano. Thank you, Ricky. We now call upon Aubrey Klingama from the Mandela Legacy Foundation to say a few very brief words. May I just encourage the speakers? I know it's a very strange thing to say in a church. Keep it brief. We want to keep the momentum, so we asked within the space, just under 5 minutes. We're chomping along. Aubrey, thank you very much. That wasn't personally directed at you. Welcome.
I must say, I am overcome. I am overcome. Cape Town once again has shown the Mandela family that this is indeed their home too. And I know that Mama, looking down at us, having enjoyed the last few years of a proper Cape Town welcome, will be delighted that the full house and the family send, of course, their apologies that they're unable to be here, but duty calls in Soweto. But they did write to you. Dear friends, we are humbled by the warm message of love and support we have received from friends of the Mandela family from around South Africa and the globe. Mama has left a great void in our lives. She indeed was the center of our lives and will remain so forever. However, we are so grateful that she was loved by so many. This love sustained her throughout her life. That love is helping us unite in grief and will be cherished. We especially thank the people of Cape Town for their embrace and support, and hope that Mama's legacy will live long in your lives as you continue to make this better South Africa even better for all those who call this place home. A special thank you to the Dean of St. George's and all those who have helped put together this beautiful service. We are humbled. We extend our heartfelt thanks and love to all of you as you mourn with us at the passing of our mother, from Zondwa and Lindo Mandela.
We call forward Zubaida Jaffa, a veteran journalist of our history and a tried and tested lover of freedom.
Father is, confirming to me that I'm small. So they need me to stand at the side of the podium, they say. Peter John Pearson, who spoke earlier so beautifully, I'm not in his league, he's in another class. He was in standard 7 when I was in standard 6. And my most abiding and real impression of him was when he stood on the little wall. Our school, South Peninsula High, didn't have a hall, so the principal would speak to us in the quad. And so what Peter John would do at interval is to go stand on the little wall of the steps, and he would be enchanting us when he was in standard 7. So thank you, Peter John. We laugh and we joke in order to cope with what is happening with us. This is a very, very difficult week. Since the moment the news came through, I in fact thought it was an April Fool's joke. But then I realized April Fool was 2 days earlier, and there was nothing funny about this. There's a sadness hanging over us. And I'm finding even with people who weren't directly touched by all this that we lived through, they are touched by Mama Winnie's life. They are touched by her life because within her, there is something about themselves. Within her, she has so many different facets that so many, especially women, relate to her completely. One of the teachers in Bloemfontein who wasn't an activist, but she sent me a note and she said, she was so alone. She was so alone. She was a single mother. Now, she herself is a single mother, so I think she was relating to that. This week and the next 2 weeks, I think, provides us an opportunity to reflect and to face the harshness of what we have lived through. We tend to, shelve it somewhere, we put it somewhere. But we've lived through an unspeakable time. I watched a film the other day. It's called A Woman in Gold. And this is about a woman, an Austrian woman, who 50 years after the Second World War was fighting for a painting of her aunt, a painting of her aunt that the Nazis had taken. She wanted the painting back because it was so painful for her that this painting was still in an Austrian museum and had been stolen by the Nazis. And I thought this week about Mama Winnie, and I thought, and we want to quibble, there are those who want to quibble this week, that she didn't suffer unspeakable, beyond imagination. And we are in that moment when we have to decide, again, as in life, in her life, in her death, she's providing us with the opportunity to consider, which direction we want to go. And for me, there are only 2 paths that are in front of us. The one path is where we criticize everything, we criticize everybody, and we find fault with those that are around us. And we try and break down everything that has been built. That's the one path. And we try our best to be as perfect as possible to show how intelligent we are, to say how the other person is wrong. We work with our ego. And the second path is to say, yes, all that we've created is messy, it's not easy, difficult, but we are like Mama Winnie, long-distance runners. We are staying in this path, and we're going to stay the path, and we're going to go on, and we're going to see that finish line of a fairer and kinder South Africa. And even if it's a mirage, but we're keeping our minds there. And we are daily practicing to be fair and kind to one another. And I think if we do that, then we will be really honoring her life. Thank you very much.
We call upon Nomawethu Solwandle and Zianda.
Amandla
wethu amandla
matla
lebona
yaruna
imatla
matimba aina matimba aina. Thank you to everyone present today. My name is Nomawethu Solwandle. Many know me from my student activist days. The fall of Mama comes just weeks after we had been in studio writing a song for the current president, sitting president, President Cyril Ramaphosa. And upon hearing about the fall of Mama on Tuesday morning, I was fortunate to receive a song in spirit that I could write and ask my wife to sing to express how much we had appreciated Mama. Mama had carried us through in our days in the South African Students' Congress, the Youth Movement Collective, which we call the PYA Alliance. And I am forced today to speak in this manner, few years after I had decided that politics is no longer one of the features I would like to full-time participate. But I'm forced today because of her revolutionary nature, because of her character, because of the words of wisdom that she had always given us, because of the symbol for which she always represented, not only to the affluent, but mostly to the working class. Today I'm forced to stand here in front of all of you and say, Winnie Mandela was not a person of glamour. It was all just a gesture, but her true heart was for the working class. Every time we come to think of her, we are reminded and encouraged. I said to my wife on Tuesday that Khayelitsha is our beginning, but it is not our ending. I say this precisely because Mama Winnie reminded us all that whatever challenges we face in life, they do not determine or define our destinies. This is a song from Khayelitsha where we believe that Mama Winnie's statue belongs amongst the township children of this country. And we thank her for this opportunity. DJ, help us. DJ. Oh, sorry, whilst the DJ is still busy, I'm sorry, I'm taking this very spiritual. My wife and I, there's no difference. So when I speak, she sings. When I write, she expresses. So I'm sorry for not introducing. This is Zianda Luthuli, my beautiful wife. And she's the voice behind the song. I would just ask and maybe try and help the DJ at the back quickly and leave her to be to the stage. Join her later.
They need a cable.
Sulale ngokolo. Winnie Mandela Zulale ngokolo. Khawulale ngokolo. Winnie Mandela khawulale ngokolo. Amandla. Oyini madoda kuselizibongo. Oyini madoda yaphela imithombo. Winnie Mandela, fearless fight, resilient icon, oh no. Oyini madoda kuselizibongo. Oyini madoda yaphela imithombo. Winnie Mandela, fearless fight, resilient icon, oh no. Liyambile iqhawe kuselizibongo. Selithule iqhala kugcwele izibongo. Winnie Mandela, fearless fight, resilient icon, oh no. Liyambile iqhawe kuselizibongo. Selithule iqhala kugcwele imibongo. Winnie Mandela, fearless fight, resilient icon, oh no. Thank you, Mama. Isizwe siyabonga. Thank you, Nomzamo. Sohlala sithanda. Uqatso ulufezile. Amadabi uwalwile. Khawulale ngoxolo. Lala ngoxolo. Khawulale ngoxolo. Lala ngoxolo. Winnie Mandela, fearless fight, resilient icon.
You must remember that name, those names, Monmabisi and Ziyanda Lutuli. Watch iTunes, the CD is coming out soon. And now we're ticking along steadily, and I remind ourselves about time, colonial concept that it is. But we got land to gain, so let's welcome Kosato.
Oh, bayasiri trencha, bayas keswalaisa, bapela bantu. Hoi, Winnie Mandela, bapela bantu. Winnie bapela bantu. Winnie bapela bantu. Winnie Mandela, bapela bantu. Winnie bapela bantu. Winnie bapela bantu. Yo, bayas retrencha, bayas casualiza, papela bantu. Oh, bayas retrencha, bayas casualiza, papela bantu. Hey, Winnie Mandela, papela bantu. Mandela, papela bantu.
Amandla! Amandla! Long live the spirit of Winnie Mandela, long live! Comrade Winnie Mandela, I bring you the warmest regards and fondest love from the millions of COSATU members across the length and breadth of South Africa. And we come here today as workers to say that we're here to share the pain of your passing in the timeless slogan of COSATU that says an injury to one is an injury to all. But mostly, Comrade Winnie, we come here to celebrate your life and to thank you for your immeasurable contribution. You were the light in the darkest days of apartheid that showed our people the way into the future. You were the leader when many of our other leaders were imprisoned or in exile and nobody else in the country was left to stand up in defense of our people. You were the inspiration that moved the nation in our darkest days when hope was fading. Comrade Winnie, you were the general that mobilized our army in the People's War against apartheid. A war that you know so well that killed so many of our people through its brutal, murderous acts. Acts that we should never forget and we should never allow to be perpetrated anywhere else. But Comrade Winnie, it was your bravery that taught us to be brave and to fight any injustice wherever we may find it in defense of our people. You remind us even today, Comrade Winnie, that you were human and you were fallible, but you were real, and you cared and loved our people and always acted in their interest and took us to the freedom that we today enjoy. But you had also reminded us that winning the vote is only the start to restoring South Africa from the horrors of apartheid. You reminded us that the liberation of our people is the undoing of the grand theft of apartheid that diminished so many of our people and that must be restored. And that's why today we say without any equivocation that the land and the wealth of our country must be restored to all of our people, and it must be restored to our people now. It is both in your words and in your actions that you have shown us how we should conduct ourselves in leadership to our people. To this day, you stayed with our people in Soweto, a lesson that must be a guide to so many of our other leaders who distance themselves from our people. Comrade Winnie, you are the mother of our nation, not because you are the wife of the father of our nation. You are the mother of our nation because you showed that as a woman, you acted with love and compassion and bravery and a warrior for our people. But you showed most of all that women could be equal to men in the struggle and equal to men in society, because that's the kind of society we were going to build. So today, as your final act, we come together in Cape Town across our political divides and across our social divides. Because as the mother of our nation, you bring us together as a people. And you bring us together with a reminding that says, our responsibility is always the best interest of our people and the realization of the Freedom Charter, which was the liberation promised to all of our people. Hamba kahle, Comrade Winnie Mandela, hamba kahle.
Comrade Tony, thank you very much for leading the way in terms of time. Much appreciated. The next speaker comes in a moment of poetry. On the 19th of October, when she was born, it was a spring day in Kimberley, and the vygies were blooming. Isn't that beautiful? Fethu Mentor to the mic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I express thankfulness to Dean Michael Wieder and Archbishop Makgoba in absentia. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the Mayor of Cape Town, Madam Patricia de Lille, former Minister of Finance, Comrade Trevor Manuel, Comrade Zizi, and all protocol observed. I want to get straight to controversy. Mama Winnie never shied away from it. I listened to her interviews, some of them dating back 20 years plus. One particular one was with Felicia Mabusa Sattler, and the other one dated back 13 years ago. In one of the interviews, she spoke about the land issue. She said, I think she was very futuristic. The issues we're grappling about today, she dealt with years ago. In that interview, she says, our struggle was about the land and the means of production. And she said, the land must be redistributed and expropriated. And then she goes on to say, however, this does not mean that whites should be driven to the sea. I would like our media to go and extract that video, that interview. And I think what she said is profound, and I think it is a guiding post for us today. Today, where there are farmer tax, gruesome farmer tax, where there is black expectation to have the land back, and there is white angst, and both sentiments very legitimate. The land must return, but nobody should be driven to the sea, and nobody should be driven to the graves. That is the monument that we can build for Mama Winnie. She was persecuted and ostracized by the apartheid system, and she was later left to hang dry by her own comrades. Today, 4 men, incidentally, all white of them. I'm sure we have all been disgusted about what we heard, the negative things we heard being said about Mama Winnie since she went to rest a few days ago. However, the universe works in mysterious ways, and so does God. It took 4 men, George Fivers, the former police commissioner, another security operative from Soweto. His name is Hank Hessling. It took Paul Erasmus, and it took senior counsel to say today, to tell South Africans, particularly our fellow white South Africans, that Winnie Mandela never killed Stompie Seipei. Winnie Mandela never plotted for the killing of Stompie Seipei. Not a court of law, not the truth and the TRC could link Mama Winnie Mandela directly as having planned and orchestrated or instructed that Stompie should be killed. So it is a lie, it is a fallacy, it is an orchestration that has been perpetuated for decades. And it is a lie and a fabrication that the governing party, I'm a member of, never bothered to debunk and to expose as an untruth. The second controversy I would like to go to, people are angry with President Mbeki for saying what he said on that interview. But I would like to put it this way to you. No, hang on, please. If Mama Winnie would have died before President Mbeki, she too was going to be candid. As we know her, she was going to tell the truth, like President Mbeki did. However, I would like to submit that where I differ with President Mbeki is where he says, yes, I do agree actually, revolutionary theory teaches that no revolution is owned or directed by a single person. That is usually a collective effort of the masses and the people. But Comrade Winnie Mandela was leading at the helm when it was very difficult, when others were in prison, when others were in exile. She epitomized, yes, together with other leaders, but we all knew her as a symbol of hope, as a symbol of defiance, and maybe she was becoming too big, or she had become too big. And we do know that it is often undesirable for individuals to grow bigger than their parties. However, I come from the generation of young lions, the generation that was carried by Mama Winnie Mandela. When my own family disowned me because I was a political prisoner, I was carried by Mama Winnie Mandela with her golden heart. And when I posted that she bought me my first perfume and my first silk pajamas, they mocked those that were the beneficiaries of apartheid. And to me, that is a symbol of a good heart. That is a symbol of what Mama Winnie wants to all of us. And at that time, she had not met me. She did not even know me. She just heard that there was a teacher incarcerated at Sun City, and it was my birthday. And when she heard that nobody was visiting me for a long, long time, she organized a family from East Berlin to adopt me, a family of liberals, to write letters to me, to send socks to me in winter. That is the heart of a revolutionary. And today, I think the biggest monument that government can build for Winnie Mandela should not be a monument of mortar and bricks. It should be a monument that bridges the gap between the poor and the rich, and between the dispossessed and those that possessed from others, that took away from others. It should be a monument of building racial harmony, because that is what she fought for, and that is what she believed in. And before I conclude, because I was told I only have 5 minutes, and I know I'm the only one that was given 5 minutes. Everybody else was given more than 5 minutes. Because I can be controversial, I had to be controlled. Jennifer Ferguson is going to do an item today. Mama Winnie was going to support her with the move of time, and she was going to call SAFA to order, because she stood against not only dispossession, she also stood against patriarchy and the injustices of patriarchy. And in saying the last thankful words to her, I would like to thank her for having been our mother, and to quote her in her own words in one interview where she said that I was the most unmarried married person throughout my life. And as married as she was, she carried all of us as both a father and a mother, and she built a beautiful relationship with her two daughters. And she even said in one of the interviews, my white mother, Helen Suzman, took care of my children when I was incarcerated or when I could not look after them. Therefore, my clarion call today, as Mama Winnie goes to rest, I plead and beg for racial harmony, and I beg that the governing party and government will lead us along that path. And I plead that that should be the monument that we build for Mama Winnie. And women, I have seen you wearing all sorts of colors here, including the colors that Mama Winnie used to wear. I salute you. Let us be to our nation what Mama Winnie was to this nation. We are living in a difficult period where we are tearing one another apart. Like Mama Winnie held us together during difficult times as a glue, let us rise as women to hold our nation together. I thank you.
Comrade Feigie, you denied the science of nature, because the Feigie only blooms in the sunlight in the daytime. He blooms in your aunt. Thank you. We now invite the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Letizia Tsenoli, to come forward.
My first word of congratulations is to you, Father Dean, and the leadership of the church for continuing the tradition of political public dialogue in this public facility. Congratulations on that. It is especially so because one who has passed on is one of us. And so we've come to celebrate the life of a pioneer parliamentarian post 1994. She was amongst those over 250 privileged ANC members who were given the responsibility to be the first members of the Constituent Assembly to help write the Constitution and then to lead in the legislative program that flew from that constitution. And in a sense, that pioneering work which she was part of is part of the monument she has already established. And speaking of monuments, one of my favorite writers in Latin America says two of his friends were fighting. One of them says, I wish when you die, they build you a statue so that birds of the world relieve themselves on your head permanently. A statue often is not the best way to express our love of those that we love. While Comrade Winnie was absolutely loyal, she never spared the government, the African National Congress itself, legitimate and correct criticism. And this, for me, is one of the legacies that we must embrace fully in society as a whole, but some of these silences that we often see in public representatives, because they are in public, are often there in our families, in our neighborhoods. We keep quiet and silent about things we must speak up about. And so that's the legacy that I would suggest we should prize more than anything else. Despite attempts to break her, including to, in quotes, isolate her to Brantford in the Free State, where I first met her, the state failed dismally. We came from a conference in Welgespreid of Penn, and one journalist called Maleho Masimani took us to Winnie's place, and we one by one went to talk to her as she leaned across the fence. In the same manner that I saw Robert Sobukwe in Khalishiu leaning over the fence, could only be seeing one person at a time and so on. But what I have now come to know, that we were not only ones. Many underground comrades of the movement interacted with her there to give her briefings, to receive leadership from her. And so, in effect, even if they intended to isolate her, they simply created a challenge of creativity to movement to interact with her and continue the struggle she prosecuted well. Someone speaks about her and says her politics was informed her deep love for the people. She chose social work as her professional occupation. And so part of her regular presence in informal settlements, in squatter camps, in a variety of areas where the poor were driven by that love for people. And so in speaking about her defiance, it was as a result of expressing outrage at what they allowed to happen in our own country. That they allowed conditions to exist to dehumanize people in the manner in which they did. And so in her own right, she was driven, as Chair said, by love. Which revolutionary wasn't driven by love for his or her people? And Winnie was that. I also want to suggest that her life represents how the private is public and how the personal is political. Her passing away offers us an opportunity to look at her life, to learn from her, both men and women, but also particularly because of the continuing existence of patriarchy, closely to study what lessons it takes. In a conference in Harare, early 90s, of the International Union of Local Authorities, we sat in a bar as we would after a lengthy conference to relax with an Australian head of Salga there. And this woman sitting across in a stool walks over to me specifically and says, "You, who the hell do you think you are? What makes you think you are any better? Winnie makes one mistake and now she must be condemned." She says to me, "Karl Marx was an alcoholic. Who talks about it? But Winnie must suffer your patriarchal nonsense." The Australian guy was looking at me. I was never so stunned in my life. I didn't know her, and she simply just walked away after her dramatic accusations of me. I'm citing this to say, despite the mistakes she may have committed, and this is my argument, that she inspired fierce support across the continent and in the world. Heroes and heroines are not so because they are perfect human beings. No, they make mistakes, but when we look at their lives as we do now, the great contributions they made to society far outweigh those weaknesses. And so, as a public representative talking about another, I wish the privilege that ANC gave us then and continues to do so to a few of us, because it can only be a few people who get to be made public representatives. I must include other political parties. I was just expressing my bias. As a presiding officer, I do have some biases. You know them, right? And they are very public. And those are very public. That public representative hold a special place in the hearts of the public, of people. And so it is the privilege of how we deal with people irrespective of who they are, wherever they are located. That bias for the poor and the working class is the one that I'm absolutely proud of, and I was proud of in Comrade Winnie Mandela. That bias I make no apologies about. It is the one that we should actually give a little space to the poor and the working class and allow the others to cool their heels. Any monument must be, I agree with Comrade Feki, that in the decisive, urgent undoing on the unacceptably high levels of inequality in our society, that is given rise to by poverty and unemployment. And these are constructs, if I may call them that, but they arise because of not following decisive policy interventions that can change these conditions. There are places where the poor are privileged so that they live not in hunger and in destitution. We can't allow that to continue to happen. That's the only valid monument to Comrade Winnie. Thank you very much, Father Dean and your team.
Thank you very much, Comrade Brother Lechiza. I must say, after what he told us about Karl Marx, I am to read Das Kapital with a very different understanding now. Friends, we are chuk-chuking along very nicely, and we now have a representative of the family, a speaker by the name of Nomawethu Madikizela. Primrose is not able to be here. She asked me to read a poem of hers, but I didn't receive it, so we asked the family representative to come. We still have a hymn to sing, during which we will take a collection, and it will be a Jericho collection. You know Joshua went around Jericho 7 times?
Good evening. Father Michael, I was listening like a child watching Popeye on Children's Channel. I'm not gonna talk too much. We like these platforms, but today is not a good day, I must say. It's good and bad, but I'm family, so you can all understand. I would like to say first, all protocol observed. I don't know whether it was a chorus or what. I wanted to greet everyone, especially my mayor here. I'm Nomawethu Madikizela. Winnie is my sister. She's not my aunt, granny, or a cousin. No, she is a sister. In our culture, it's a sister, not a cousin. Our grandfathers are brothers, were brothers, sorry. We come from a royal family, as you have heard so many times from Sis Winnie. At home, we don't call her Winnie, we call her Nomzamo Ozanyiwe. I must say, this came as a shock to us as a family. I don't know where to start. I was just thinking maybe I can just write down some notes, but I failed. I will talk very little, really, as a sibling. We didn't see Sis Winnie, as you can see, the age between me and herself. As a family, the people that are still mostly alive, it's my age group. We don't have elders. We haven't spent too much time with Sis Winnie. We only saw her when there are funerals at home, at Mbongweni. That's the only time that we sit with her and chat. But believe me, she was always very busy. Phone calls from everywhere. People calling her, trying to get help, and she did listen. To us, Sis Winnie was a pillar of strength. She actually epitomizes strength to us. With, it's hard, guys, it's hard, and please just bear with me. Thank you. The last time we spoke with her, I think it was last year, little did we know that it was the last time we see her. We talked on the phone. There was fortunately no gathering. Unfortunately for us, there was no gathering. There was no funeral within the family. She loved us. I'm not going to dwell. South Africa has spoken, guys. She loved people. She loved everyone. She helped wherever she can. Okay, maybe let me look at what I quickly wrote. When she visits the family at Bizana, people looked up to her. People come and, pour their souls. Because the area, it's a very poor area. I hope now that she is gone, the government will do something. Of course, there is electricity through Sis Winnie. There is a mini clinic that is being built. She has got many projects that I don't want to dwell on them, but she was a very busy person. Father John, I heard you also but I still like to say, death, where is thy sting? I am happy, and the family back home is pleased that her last gathering was in church. We thought it was just, a flu or something. We never thought she's gonna come out of hospital. It's really sad. We have lost as a family. We have lost a sister. We have lost a mother. She was just everything to us. I wish you could have known the day she was gonna pass on. And for those that speak ill of Siswini, if she was alive, as a family, we would say, thank you, God, because they remind you of who you're not. God has given her a gift, and she used it. We will miss Siswini. We are very saddened as a family. We thank everyone in Cape Town who took time to come and praise Siswini. She lived her life, and now she must rest in peace. And I hope there's nothing that is gonna follow her going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomawethu. Whenever Mama Winnie was in Cape Town, she had a dedicated driver by the name of Peter Modale. So we just acknowledge you and thank you for being here. Can we just... Peter Motali. The Parliamentary choir was not able to make it. And we now call upon our next speaker, Trevor Manuel.
Nomzamo ixesha unity South Africa ixesha unity South Africa ixesha phakama South Africa ixesha phakama South Africa ixesha unity South Africa ixesha
Amandla mayibuye iAfrika. Father Peter John, members of the clergy, fellow speakers, all of us gathered together, comrades and friends, good evening. I want to express my sincere appreciation to Father Michael Weeder and the organizers and point out that I don't speak in any representative capacity. Don't worry, Sis. I speak as one who was a beneficiary of Mum Winnie's profound loyalty and deep affection. So let me share with you in mourning her passing. But though I can see Mum Winnie giggle as Mum Winnie used to giggle and say, "Come on, mobilize, don't mourn." Because that was what she was about. It was about understanding our place and continuity of struggle. It's also appropriate at this time of year that we remember others who have fallen. Father Peter John dealt with people in Cape Town. I want to take us back a little bit further to one of the children who was influenced by people like Mum Winnie and who was hanged on the 6th of April 1979, Solomon Mahlangu. And in remembering Mum Winnie, let us remember all of those who sacrificed to bring us through the struggles in our lives. Uncle Kathy, another one whose anniversary of his passing we mourned last week on the 28th, wrote the foreword to Mum Winnie's book, that book referred to earlier, 491 Days, which is the most haunting account of that period in detention, the bulk of it in solitary, between the 12th of May 1969 and the 14th of September 1970. And in the foreword, Uncle Kathy reflects on his own prison sentence, not as a competition, but he reflects on it very deeply. And then he compares and he says, and I quote, "Yes, we were suffering, but after taking every hardship and every deprivation into account, it could not be disputed that we were protected. No policeman could barge onto Robben Island or into Paulsmoor prison and start shooting. This was not the case with comrades outside prison. They were at the very cold face of struggle. They had no protection. Comrades such as Winnie Mandela, the 600 unarmed, defenseless school children who were slaughtered in the Soweto uprising, the leaders and members of the United Democratic Front and the Congress of South African Students, individually and collectively, in the face of adversity and danger, they kept the flag flying." And that is the story of Winnie Mandela. It's a story of the determination to keep the flag flying in the face of whatever danger. Mum Winnie's own account of that harrowing detention that starts with the police refusing to allow her to call her sister to look after Zeni and Zinzi, then aged 10 and 9, or the 200 days without human contact, the respective hard periods of interrogation, the fact that she was stripped naked in a cell, and the calculated attempt to commit suicide. She chose to do the latter slowly because she did not wish Madiba or her daughters to be shamed. It's in understanding such a journey that one begins to appreciate the depth of resolve, her caring and a search for inner strength as the big divider between those who make it and those who don't. In considering this, and I know I don't want to get Father Michael or Peter John singing, but in considering this, one is reminded of the haunting refrain of Bob Marley's redemption song, "None but ourselves can free our minds." Mum Winnie learned to depend on her own strength as a core of her freedom. In 2012, reflecting on her detention, she said, and I quote, "Being held incommunicado was the most cruel thing that the nationalists ever did. I'd communicate with the ants, anything that had life. If I had lice, I would even have nursed them. That's what solitary confinement does. There is no worse punishment than that. I think you can stand imprisonment of 27 years. You are mixing with other prisoners. You get 3 meals a day. The only thing you've lost is your freedom of movement. Your mind isn't incarcerated, that's all. But with solitary confinement, you are not allowed to read. You're not allowed to do anything. You have just yourself, unquote. Part of that story is told in a letter published in the morning newspaper here today. And it's a letter that she'd written to Madiba that says, in quotes, "In prison they treated me like an animal. They humiliated me and robbed me of my dignity." And she ends the letter with, "But Nelson, that is why I must fight." So I draw attention to that letter, but I also want to invite each and every one of you to read that book, 491 Days, to understand. And I know there are many priests here, and I'm going to step onto their hallowed ground. They haven't had a definition of hell, but read 491 Days and you begin to understand what it could entail. There's the other song about great love, and there's a line in it that says, "So I learned to depend on me." And that was Winnie. It wasn't even an organization, it was Winnie in her deep resolve to be and live and fight and lead. And it is that self-discovery that made her as strong and as uncompromising as we all knew her to be. And because of that, not even those of us who tasted the hors d'oeuvres of solitary confinement have the right to judge. But Mama Winnie was judged and haunted by those who wanted her to be somebody else, who emerged from those trials and tribulations and be a puppy dog, and she was never going to be that. It wasn't her role in society. And there are some parts of the media that made her out to be a political monster. But in a very recent article, former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke disputes this vehemently. He was part of the defense team in the case that Comrade Fakey spoke of and worked with her very closely. He writes, and I quote, "She had an incredible ability to be able to take on injustice and soak up pain in a way that is not immediately describable," unquote. Mama Winnie was 26 when her husband was sentenced to life imprisonment. She was 32 when she was incarcerated for those 491 days. And through all of that, yet the harassment and torture didn't stop. She was banned on her release, and then on the 16th of May 1977, she was collected with her meager belongings and driven to Brandfort, whence she was banished. She'd never even heard of Brandfort. And then she was forced into this house with no running water or electricity, a house with no flooring or ceiling, in Brandfort without a means of income. And then instructed to have no contact with locals. Whatever she said and wrote of solitary confinement, banishment was also continuous, cruel, and inhuman punishment. No court of law was needed. Just the say-so of the Minister of Justice. That house, House 802, in the townships, the locals named Patakashle because the apartheid regime didn't even give it a name, was designed to hurt her very deeply. Yet Mama Winnie turned her own pain into defiant acts of love. It was then that she started a clinic to heal the forgotten victims of apartheid in Brandfort, and a soup kitchen to feed the hungry, all of it in defiance of her order of banishment. Her friends, Dr. Motlana and Archdeacon John Rushton, who was the Archdeacon of the Cathedral, the Anglican Cathedral in Bloemfontein, he took a weekly communion. He drove down from Bloemfontein to Brandfort on a weekly basis, but they also raised the resources for these acts of love that kept her going. When I first met Mama Winnie, it was about 1981. It was during her banishment, but she got occasional permission to come and see Tata on the island, and we connected here. And then a few years later, I drove solo from Johannesburg to Brandfort. I didn't know Brandfort, didn't know where she lived. I just did it. And when I arrived there, she held me for very long. And I think that crazy act created this bond between her and I. I was mad like she was mad, and it was okay. We could love each other because we understood each other in this way. And I say that I earned her loyalty and affection. And in that affection, she offered herself as a sounding board, as a critic, as a cajoler, as a supporter, as all of those things. Somebody who was different, brave and bold, and committed, far more committed than what most of us could ever be. And I know that I wasn't the only beneficiary of that kind of love and commitment. When my wife Maria started working at Transnet in about 2004, things were very tough there because, you know, there are people who treat state-owned enterprises as their personal inheritance. And they don't like outsiders coming in, and this was actually happening at Transnet at the time. And out of the blue, Mama Winnie called Maria and said to her, "I want to come and see you for lunch." Now, when Mama Winnie says that, you kind of take a view, what is this going to be? What is it about? And so on. And she said, "No, please come." And Mama Winnie came. And everybody wanted to touch Mama Winnie. It was like that. And I think the office was on the 50th story of the Carlton building, and everybody wanted to touch Mama Winnie. There weren't selfies then. It would have taken a week for her to get through everybody. And after lunch, Mama Winnie said to Maria, "I want you to watch this." She put her arm around Maria and walked her from office to office and said to the occupants of the office, "This is my daughter. Mess with her, you mess with her mother." Peace was immediately established at Transnet. Now, I just hope my friend and comrade Pravin Gordon finds a guardian angel like that to help sort out the state-owned enterprises. That loyalty was fierce. And it always finds an interesting resonance. Mama Winnie, as we all can attest to, had the ANC coursing through her DNA. She was ANC. She couldn't be anything else. She couldn't be described as anything but of the African National Congress. And she remained fiercely loyal to the ANC throughout her life. But it was never an exclusive loyalty. And so when Julius Malema and the EFF say that it is our mother who has passed, he is perfectly correct and entitled to say so, because we know that Mama Winnie loved Julius and other leaders of the EFF as much as she loved everybody in the African National Congress. And it wasn't exclusively for the EFF either. It was also AZAPO, it was the PAC, it was many organizations, and the UDM. And everybody can claim Mama Winnie on a non-partisan basis, and Patricia, I'm sure she would have reached out to you in your moment of trouble in the city and say, you are of us. You see, apart from her courage, her greatest gifts were her ear right on the ground, checking everything that moved. It may have been this engagement with the ants, but she knew what was happening in the country. And it's in responding to this ear, and in her depth of caring for the poor and dispossessed, that she was fiercely critical of the African National Congress, especially of the gap between intentions and outcomes in the lives of people. Winnie didn't spare anybody any blushes. So let me digress with the matter that I find rather annoying. It relates to the restoration of the house to which was banished, House 802 in Patakashe in Brandfort. We're all aware that the restoration of the house as a museum was budgeted for a long time ago, and that project was never implemented. Now we are told by the former Premier of the Free State, Mr. Elias Segubelo Magashule, that he has been working with the family since 2007. This is the same Premier who processed the approvals for the Estina dairy, totaling some 220 million in 2 weeks. This is the same former Premier whose daughter is the beneficiary of a 130 million rand housing contract, but who now informs us that this minuscule project to restore the house to which our mother was banished has taken 11 years and can't get done. And even when he talks about, he says, well, everybody knows the money hasn't disappeared. Where is the money that was budgeted for? And even the numbers he talks about for the restoration of that very basic house, for the 3 million rand he talks about, what does he want to do? Does he want to gold plate the window frames? Does he want to put in a jacuzzi? Does he also want to air condition the house? No, that must remain that place of pain. It must be the place where we take our children and our public servants and remind them of the words of Madiba at his inauguration, never, never, and never again. But if the motivation is not to break the intergenerational poverty and deprivation, if the motivation is not to forever end oppression and exploitation, if the motivation is self-enrichment, then you get the dilly-dallying that we're seeing at the moment. And we must call it out for what it is, and we must say no to it, and we must insist that that house at Brandfort be a memory to the pain and suffering of Mama Winnie. I'm saying Mama Winnie had this way of calling out things as they were. Sometime last year, we'd heard that Mama Winnie was hospitalized, and we were quite out of order, Maria and I. We went to Mill Park Hospital, where the manager didn't ask questions. She said, "Oh, you're coming to see Mommy?" We said, "Yes, we're coming to see Mommy," and she took us through. There were certain protocols that she should have observed, and I hope she doesn't get into trouble for me saying this today. And she took us to the ward, and inside, we had to wait outside. Inside the ward was Zinzi. She came after a while and told us that Mommy was really, really very ill, and that the family didn't think it appropriate for her to have visitors. And so we said, "That's fine. Will you tell Mommy that we love her? And then Zinzi relented and she said, all right, sneak in for a moment and just greet and leave. And when we went in, greeted on either side of the bed, just touched her hand, she opened her eyes and giggled like Mama Winnie could giggle. And she said, I knew you'd come. And after the exchanging stories about the health and the normal pleasantries that one does, Mama Winnie said, and Comrade Zizi, Mama Winnie said, and I'm sure you know this, she said, this ANC is such a disappointment. It has become a den of thieves. I'm sure your father is turning in his grave. And she then proceeded in that ill state of health to detail in chapter and verse stories that she had picked up, I don't know when and I don't know from what sources, nitty-gritty detail of corruption, nitty-gritty detail of sexual abuse, nitty-gritty detail of the abuse of power. And she said, in the interests of your father, go and fix the movement. Now I know that Mama Winnie was substantially, though not completely, happy with the outcome of the 54th National Conference. But in the same breath, I want to say, and because there are so many priests here, I can say mea culpa here in the cathedral. I want to say in the spirit of Mama Winnie, that spirit that we knew as a spirit of no compromise and no surrender. To that spirit of Mama Winnie, I want to pray forgiveness because I was not sufficiently courageous to emulate her and to take my personal fight to the finish. But in that admission, and in the spirit of Mama Winnie, we must all recommit to a luta continua. Thank you very much.
Friends and comrades, we are now at that glorious moment in any service when we have the last speaker. We just had Good Friday and we had 3 hours. We're now in the second hour. So, Sisi Kodwa, please, I understand the township where Mama Winnie was kept is called Patakatle. So handle us with care.
Thank you very much. Ethulandwana, ethulandwana mamuka. Ethulandwana, ethulandwana mamuka. Yes. Ethulandwana, ethu. Amandla. Gawethu. 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 Bafana ibambe. Bafana ibambe. Bafana ibambe. Bafana ibambe. Yo 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 esepamu sala bafana sende kumbuza Winnie Mandela oh esepamu sala bafana sende kumbuza oh Winnie bafana ibambene bafana ibambene bafana ibambeni, bafana ibambeni, iyo yo yo esepap sana bap sende kombo. Winnie Mandela wo esepap sana bapa sende kombo. Oh, Winnie Mandela, Bafana ibambeni, Bafana ibambeni, Bafana ibambeni, Bafana ibambeni, yo yo yo, sepam, sana bafana, sende kombo. Winnie Mandela was pap, sana bapa, sende kumbuz. Winnie Mandela, Amanda, 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 Amanda. Program director, sincere apologies for that disruption. It had to happen because we're celebrating a Jinjatit 3 umti omkhulu owileyo. Let me first express my honor and sincere gratitude for the opportunity to be invited to speak at this historic platform and this historic church. Growing up in Cape Town in the dusty streets of Kwalanga, later Kukuletu and Khayelitsha, I was always inspired as a young man and activist by clergy, both black and white, who stood at this platform and declared apartheid as an evil. I never thought in my life one evening I will come and stand in the very same platform that so many luminaries stood and represented and side by side and fought with people who were oppressed, our people, and declared again the worst evil in the whole world called apartheid. I had an opportunity, if time were to permit, to meet with Mama Winnie on numerous occasions. Given the responsibility given to me with the passage of time by the African National Congress, if Mama Winnie would not have called you, if you were in the Youth League or in the ANC and say, come here, my boy. Come the Trevor, will know this language. That is how she speaks. Come here, my boy, come here, my son. Now, it's not easy because she does not tell you why she's calling you. If you are not a person who does not like criticism, don't go and see Mama Winnie. You may not leave the house in Soweto smiling. But also, if you are doing well, Mama Winnie will be the first to say, well done, my boy. One of the very few leaders, if any, when I was appointed, very young at the time, a job that I don't envy. When I was appointed as a spokesperson of the ANC, she was one person who called me and said, come here, my boy. We spent hours at her house in Soweto. She gave me the whole history that Comrade Trevor was talking about. The ANC, the difficulties, her observations and reservations, and her loyalty and absolute commitment to the liberation of this country and its people. I'm making these few remarks because her passing was celebrating at the same time we're honoring the end of a chapter of a dangerous generation. There's a generation that is, her passing is closing a chapter. A generation of dangerous, brave, selfless leaders. That generation is going. I'm sure there are few left. At the same time, we are celebrating a generation that is now at the helm of the movement and at the helm of the country. But what are the distinct features of the generation that is closing a chapter now with her passing? Selfless servants of the people who were not obsessed with leadership position, who had absolute commitment to liberate the people because they understood to be the member of the ANC or to be the leader of the ANC, it meant two things or both. It meant death or incarceration. They understood. To come out to be a member or to be a leader, there's a possibility of incarceration to some small island not far from here, and elsewhere in the country, or death, or both. And that is the characteristics of that generation. But we must then say quickly, Father, how do we honor the legacy of that generation? With all the criticisms and the reservations and observations that Mama had heard about her own movement. She committed whatever challenges that her own movement had. We must honor the commitment of our organization to serve the people. First and foremost, as a member of the organization, you join voluntarily, you must imbue and inspired by the values of the ANC to serve the people. When you sign what Comrade Rose called the oath of membership, you commit yourself to the values and principles of the African National Congress. Mama passed away peacefully on Monday because having had a number of discussions with her, if I would have time, what Comrade Trevor is talking about, when he came out of Nazareth, she said, I feel that the ANC has self-corrected. I feel my organization has turned the corner. It is now the organization that is reconnecting with the masses and the masses of our people. Because there are two things that the leadership of any organization, particularly the African National Congress, it must achieve. It must do two things that the conference of the ANC has done. It must restore confidence and it must inspire hope. The conference must achieve one of the two, or it must achieve both. And in her own observation and reservations, Mama's assessment is that the 54th National Congress of the ANC has achieved both. It has restored confidence, now the leadership that inspires hope. And it's important to emphasize the point that Mama, of course, like some leaders of the ANC and many in public, they had criticism and self-criticism about the direction of the African National Congress going to the conference. She was not hiding. I met with her a couple of times. On the 1st of January, whilst I'm sure many Capetonians were celebrating in the beaches, I had hours with her at her home in Soweto to reflect on the outcomes of the National Conference. And she had everything to say about each and every member of the elected member of the National Executive Committee, including the top 6. Starting with the president. She had everything to say about both in terms of the weaknesses subjectively and objectively. I left that house on the 1st, feeling empowered in terms of what we need to do. The second value of that generation, Father, is a generation that knew that, among other things, when freedom comes and democracy comes, like Owar Tambo says, we're gonna face more challenges than we fought against apartheid, including fighting among yourselves, fighting for nothing else, not about the people, but fighting about positions. I want to emphasize this point. Mama Winnie was not a woman leader. Mama Winnie was a leader. And if there was a time, I will explain this narrative of a woman leader versus a leader. Mama Winnie was not a woman leader. Mama Winnie was a leader. The most trusted and respected, sometimes most trusted and reliable, more than male comrades. I need to also to make this point. That unity of the African National Congress was sacrosanct to Mama Winnie, because unity of the ANC is a precondition in order to unite South Africans. Mama Winnie, wherever she is, she would be happy, because when Christ resurrected, Mama Winnie died. Christ resurrected, Mama Winnie died. On Friday, she's worshiping in Mamelodi, in Midlands in Soweto. On Sunday, she attends a Sunday service. Suddenly, Mama Winnie never prepared us, including the African National Congress and the people of South Africa. She never prepared us. She's been in and out, yes, but this one of Monday, we were not prepared. And it's the only Mama Winnie who can be called a mother of the nation. No other mama would be called a mother of the nation. She's a mother of the nation because Mama Winnie is a product of the masses of our people. She's not a fake. She's a product of the masses of our people, and she's a product of the enemy in terms of her conduct. It's the enemy that made Mama Winnie to be how she became. My last point, Father, so that I don't keep you long. The people who are running negative stories or talking negative about, we don't need to convince anybody about who Mama Winnie was. The millions of South Africans, including those gathered here, they know who Mama Winnie was. Those who run negative stories, they're hiding the fact that they don't want to talk about the brutality of apartheid against Mama Winnie. But there are lessons you must learn, both as a democratic government and a democratic state, from apartheid that we must never repeat. You must never, and you can never ban people on the basis of their ideas. Because an idea will never die. A person may die, but an idea will never die. Nobody must be banned on the basis of his or her ideas. Whether we agree or not, that's neither nor here. But nobody must be banned on the basis of ideas. So there's a lot of what apartheid has done to Mama Winnie that we celebrate today. They thought they will survive. We can't use laws. We must learn. We can't use laws to silence the voices of other people. As a democratic government, as a democratic state, when we disagree, we must engage. We must not use laws that were used by the oppressor to oppress and silence the voices of the people, because the idea will never die. The person may die, but the idea will never die. That is why, if one reads some of the interesting poems of the English writer, the playwright and the author, William Shakespeare, I think in mind, Shakespeare had Mama Winnie. In one of his famous poems, All the World's a Stage, men and women enter at different times, and they play different parts, and they exit at different times. The world was a stage for Mama Winnie. Nobody, unless those who are jealous, nobody can take away such an ability. There are very few among us, whether living or departed, nobody can take away that ability of being selfless, being brave, being committed, being principled. There are very few of us today who may remain as principled as Mama Winnie under so much difficulty. Banishment, harassment, imprisonment. As the African National Congress, we dip our revolutionary banner and thank her, and thank the people of South Africa. What we see here today represents a character of the person we're celebrating. This is a character and a reflection of the history of the liberation. Black and white, sitting here celebrating an individual who changed the lives of this country and shaped the history. Mama Winnie, on behalf of your organization, on behalf of your president, Silile Ramaphosa, we are here to say thank you very much for your contribution. We will continue to soldier on. We must not mask the difficulties. We must face our weaknesses. We must acknowledge our weaknesses. We must own up on our mistakes and say to the people, yes, we have erred, but the 54th National Congress of the ANC gives us an opportunity of the renewed hope of our people. We must make sure that we unite our people, black and white, like Mama Winnie would have done. Amanda! Amanda! Thank you.
Friends and comrades, we have come to the closing few minutes of our service of honor and celebration. And I ask you to please turn to the section that says a prayer by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And then during the singing of Liza Lis in Dingalako, I ask that Bishop Michelle, if you are here, would you please come forward to announce the words of the benediction. So congregation, please stand. And we will alternate the prayer by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and then we'll say together a litany of solidarity. So the first line, the brothers in the house will say, followed by the sisters in the house. And the last line we say together, brothers, goodness is stronger than evil. Light is stronger. Victory is ours. Can we say that together again? Victory is ours. I must say you make very good Anglicans and very poor Baptists. We pray together a litany of solidarity. Our Father and Mother, who is in us here on earth, holy is your name in the hungry, who share their bread and their song. Your kingdom come, which is a generous land, flowing with milk and honey. Let us do your will, standing up when all are sitting down, and raising our voice when all are silent. You are giving us our daily bread, in the song of the bird and the miracle of the corn. Forgive us for keeping silent in the face of injustice, and for burying our dreams, for not sharing bread and wine, love and the land among us now. Don't let us fall into the temptation of shutting the door through fear, of resigning ourselves to hunger and injustice, of taking up the same arms as the enemy, but deliver us from evil. Give us the perseverance and the solidarity to look for love, even if the path has not yet been trodden, even if we foil, so we shall not have known your kingdom, which is being built forever and ever. Amen.
Lisa Lizidinga. May God bless you with a restless discomfort about easy answers, half-truths and superficial relationships, so that you may seek truth boldly and love deep within your heart. May God bless you with holy anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may tirelessly work for justice, freedom, and peace among all people. May God bless you with the gift of tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, or the loss of all that they cherish, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort and transform their pain into joy. May God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you really can make a difference in this world, so that you are able, with God's grace, to do what others claim cannot be done, just like her in whose memory we have met. God bless Africa, guard her children, guide her leaders, and give her peace. Amen.
Friends, as we thank you very much, Bishop, as we come to the end of our service, I will be amiss and discourteous if I did not acknowledge the members of the organizing committee. So firstly, to our comrade Feichi for your support, and those who did the legwork to get all these things together, Pamela Court, Rod Solomons, Lionel Arendorf, and also for your support, Faiz Jacobs, and all other members who have made a significant contribution. William Daly for the Portaloos, which I don't think has been used, but it was there just as an emergency backup. And then lastly also Mamela Visions and Sound Solutions, and Rosie's hiring for the flowers. Thank you very much, and good night, everybody.